Planning. So what can happen? Changes can occur. We know this. Not everything is predictable, but if and when changes occur, it is imperative that communication between county boards and providers happen as soon as the change is known. Not 2 days from now, not 3 hours before the change is to start, as soon as we know. If Jessica breaks her leg, we know Jessica's going to be down and out for a while. When do we start communicating with the county boards? We start communicating now. The county boards need to know as soon as something should happen that's going to put a provider outside that plus or minus 3% window. Providers, you should be communicating with the county board as soon as you become aware that the change will cause your numbers to be delivered for that month to fall outside that plus or minus 3% window. Because remember, Gary spoke about it before, when changes occur, that cause of an increase or decrease of more than 3%, you have 60 days from the end of the month the services were rendered and to complete that change. Providers, you have 30 days from the end of the month to communicate any change. Counties, you have 30 days to revise the CPT. So you now have 60 days altogether to get a change into CPT requirements.
So Jessica, one more thing on providers on unscheduled time. One of the reasons I see why utilization is so low in CPT is because of the way time is entered into unscheduled time. So the example I'm going to give you is, for the most part, what we see is all the time in unscheduled time is being one-to-one. Well, you have to take into account what's happening with everybody else during that time period. So I'm going to give you an example. There are 4 people living together, and George is 68 years old, and he has decided that he's going to retire. And all George wants to do every day is he wants to take care of his dog, he wants to walk his dog. He does not want to go to the senior day program because those are for old people. He doesn't consider himself old, he's just retired. He's 68 years old. Then we have other folks that live in that home that for one reason or another will be home different days. What we typically do is we put in the staffing pattern one-to-one for George because he's home all the time. And then for everyone else when they're going to be home, we put in one-to-one for unscheduled time. So we end up with all of those time periods in CPT, 2 staff people when typically there's only going to be 1. That is a very common issue in CPT for where we have put things in at the wrong ratios. There are 2 ways to deal with those in CPT. We can either take the number of days that we predict that that's going to happen and we can adjust the staffing schedules, or we can take all of that time during the day and we can put it in unscheduled time, but put it in at the ratios that we believe that will occur at. So, for example, in the case where George is home all the time, history may tell us that 2 days a week, other individuals will also be home. Well, we can put in 3 days a week in staffing schedules for one-to-one for George, and then for the other 2 days, we could put in ratios of 1-to-2 or 1-to-3 in unscheduled time to make up for the fact that during those days there are really going to be just 1 staff person and a number of people home. So when you're thinking about unscheduled time, again, think about it in terms of it's only time that isn't otherwise in a staffing pattern.
County boards, this is an extremely important concept for you to make sure that you understand exactly what Gary was explaining, because otherwise you are going to throw your providers outside of their plus or minus 3%. And we've been using an example in our monthly rate calculator live trainings where we used a 150-hour week. Then if you think about that across 4 weeks, it's a 600-hour month. So that 3% is only 18 hours plus or minus. So the provider would have 18 hours under or 18 hours over, and if you begin to authorize wrongly, you can put somebody in a situation where you have one full day each week, which is going to throw them outside the plus or minus 3%. So it's a very important concept to understand, because 18 hours, although it may sound like a lot, is not very many hours. So that's why it's important to collaborate with your providers on scheduled and unscheduled time.